Well, 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 looks like old Bojo's pulled together some kind of a Brexit deal. And the markets absolutely loved it. Overnight, the sterling hit 5-month highs against the dollar. But that didn't last too long. If you look at the chart, it's pretty obvious that something happened later, and that's what I saw this morning when I got up. Because of course this whole Brexit story, with the deal being announced and then eventually the hopes being crushed, that all happened while I was sleeping. And the bottom line is that things still don't look too great for this deal, which frankly I'm not too unhappy about. And so let's get into it. Why is it that Boris was finally able to come to a deal with the EU? That is, of course, because he finally compromised and gave up what was the big sticking point for this whole time between the UK and the EU, and that is the Irish backstop, the hard Irish border. If there was a true no-deal Brexit, just with no negotiations between the EU and the UK, what you would end up happening is, Northern Ireland, which is a part of the United Kingdom, would, effectively be a totally separate country from the Republic of Ireland, and there would be a hard national border there. People would have to go through, immigration and customs and things at a border checkpoint if they wanted to go into Northern Ireland. Products in Northern Ireland would only have to comply with, British law. It would have nothing to do with European law. And this is something that the EU is dead set against. The EU doesn't want to give up Northern Ireland. They want to keep their footprint there. They want the entire island of Ireland to be under, or at least within, a European sphere of influence. And it really seems to me like what they're trying to say to the UK is, hey, if you want to leave, if you want to leave the Union, the EU, well, you can do that, but we're going to hold on as tight as we can to you, and we're probably going to rip off a piece of you. You're not going to leave the EU in one piece, quite literally. So they're trying to cut up the UK and separate them off from Northern Ireland, so that Northern Ireland is, closer to the Republic of Ireland, and thus the European Union. And eventually, what you'll end up happening is that Northern Ireland will become very well integrated into the EU, to the point to where maybe one day the UK will lose any claim to sovereignty over those what are they, 7 counties. And so it looks to me like Boris said, hey, the Parliament passed that law and said that I have to have some kind of a deal by October the 31st. And and so I kind of have to make any deal I can, or I have to ask for an extension. And so Boris looked at it and said, okay, the EU's never going to agree to a deal without me giving this up. And so if I don't make a deal, I just have to keep asking for extensions, and that wouldn't be good. So Boris, I guess, just made the calculus that, hey, we'll just sell out Northern Ireland, and getting at least the island of Britain out of the EU is better than nothing. But even though that allowed him to make a deal with the EU, that sort of a deal is never going to pass in Parliament. Just like Theresa May's deal before, I predict with absolute certainty, just as everyone else's today, that Boris's deal here is not going to pass Parliament. And I guess I'll just go party by party and go over why nobody's going to support this. So let's start with Boris's coalition partners, the Democratic Unionist Party, and of course the DUP are a pro-British party in Northern Ireland, the types who do not like the Irish Republicans, who want nothing to do with them, and who are wholly opposed to being sold down the river and being under EU influence and somehow being treated differently than the UK, because they feel quite rightfully that this is the first step towards being annexed by the Republic of Ireland, and by the UK eventually abandoning Northern Ireland and leaving all its subjects there. So not even Boris's own coalition partners are willing to support this bill in Parliament. They have absolutely every reason to oppose this, considering that the only compromise was really made on their side. I think it's pretty unquestionable that a no-deal Brexit would be far preferable to this deal when it comes to a North Irish Unionist. And Labour, the main opposition party, they're of course very much opposed to this too. Now, because Jeremy Corbyn is a crypto Brexiteer, it is a little hard for me to understand exactly Labour's rationale. But basically, their position is, hey, we're the opposition, so we're going to oppose this. It's a bad deal. Okay, I'll just leave it at that. Labour thinks it's a bad deal. The Lib Dems, they're another big party now. They are they've gone full Ramoner, and they're still Ramoning, and they are going to oppose this deal because it's a Brexit deal, and they're going to oppose any Brexit deal because they don't want Brexit. So that's their shtick. They're not going to vote for Brexit because they think this deal is just too pro-Brexit, which is of course nonsense. And Nigel Farage has a reasonable take as always, and he feels like, hey, this deal gives up too much, which it does. I think even Boris agrees with that. I think the only reason Boris made this deal is because he's bound, by Parliament, because they passed that bill saying, hey, you have to make a deal or ask for an extension. So I think that Boris made this deal just for the sake of having a deal. It's going to get voted down, and then he's going to have to ask for an extension, and hopefully, and I think the EU is probably done with him at this point, hopefully the EU is just going to not give him the extension, and that means that Brexit will happen on Halloween night, October the 31st, and that'll be it. Because a deal, there's never going to be a deal that's going to pass Parliament, and there's never going to be a deal that's really a good deal. I think that the only way that Brexit ever happens, as I've said before, is through a no-deal scenario. And I think that it's just they're playing a game of, I guess, chicken, you could say, to where it's kind of like everyone knows that the end result is there's going to be a no deal. It's just who's going to impose that first? Is it going to be Juncker saying, okay, no more negotiating, we're done, you're out, no deal? Or is it going to be the UK saying, hey, we're done trying to negotiate, no deal? That's the only option. One of the two has to give up. So I'm hoping at this point that that Juncker's done screwing around, and that he was happy with this deal, and he'll say, hey, take it or leave it to the British. That there is no more chances after this, and that he'll drop them. And from his perspective, he'll feel like he's the winner and that they're losing. And of course, the Brexiteers will feel like they won a great victory, because ultimately the two sides do want to go their separate ways. I think it's clear through this whole process that the Eurocrats have nothing but contempt for the British. So I'll keep track of this whole situation and see where it goes from here. If you gained anything of value out of this video, I'd appreciate you clicking that like button and sharing this video. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe, because I do upload every day and I'd hate to have you miss one. So I'll see you folks back here tomorrow.